A Place Called Home, a WangXian Story. Chapter 4. The next morning, Lan Wangji arrived even earlier than he had the day before. The winter air still carried the lingering chill of dawn. Thin wisps of mist hovered above the fields as he unlocked the side gate and stepped onto the familiar stone path. His footsteps slowed. Wei Ying was already there. He knelt before the grave, carefully gathering the blossoms the wind had scattered during the night. Fresh wildflowers rested beside him in a woven basket. One by one, he replaced yesterday's fading bouquet with a new arrangement. Not hurried, not ceremonial, simply another morning. When he finished, he noticed Lan Wangji standing at the entrance. For a brief moment, their eyes met. Wei Ying gave him a small nod before quietly stepping away. He crossed to the old wooden bench beneath the cherry tree, leaving the space before the grave undisturbed. Lan Wangji understood the gesture. He walked forward alone. He placed the gentians he had brought beside the wildflowers. After a silent bow, he remained there for several moments, looking at the name engraved into the stone. The breeze stirred the cherry blossoms overhead. Then he turned and joined Wei Ying on the bench. The familiar silence settled comfortably between them. Neither seemed in a hurry to break it. After a while, Wei Ying spoke without turning his head. "Have you eaten?" Lan Wangji answered honestly. "No." Wei Ying nodded as though he had expected that answer. "Then come join us." Lan Wangji looked at him. Wei Ying finally turned, a faint smile touching his lips. "You've come all this way. It'd be rude to let you leave hungry." He stood, brushing a few fallen petals from his coat. "Come on." Without waiting for an answer, he started toward the small wooden gate at the edge of the memorial garden. Lan Wangji rose quietly and followed. Wei Ying unlatched the gate. It opened inward with a soft creak. Beyond it stretched a narrow path disappearing between rows of fruit trees, the morning sun filtering through their branches. Lan Wangji paused for the briefest moment on the threshold. Until now, everything he had known of his mother's final years had ended beneath the cherry blossom tree. Beyond this gate lay the life she had lived, the home she had built, the years he had never known. Wei Ying glanced back over his shoulder. "You coming?" Lan Wangji met his eyes, then stepped through the gate. For the first time, he entered the farm. Wei Ying pushed open the wooden gate, holding it just long enough for Lan Wangji to step through before letting it swing shut behind them. The quiet of the memorial garden remained on the other side. Ahead lay the farm. The narrow stone path curved gently between rows of young maple trees before opening into a wide courtyard. Lan Wangji slowed almost instinctively. The farm was larger than he had imagined, yet nothing about it felt grand. It felt lived in. To one side stood neat vegetable plots stretching into the distance, their rows carefully arranged despite the winter season. Some beds lay covered to protect young seedlings, while others waited patiently for spring planting. Beyond them stood a long greenhouse, its glass walls catching the morning sunlight. On the opposite side spread an orchard. Bare branches rested quietly through winter, though a few late persimmons still clung stubbornly to one of the trees. Beneath them, patches of wildflowers bordered the orchard before giving way to an open meadow. A movement caught his eye. Several rabbits darted through the tall grass before disappearing into the meadow as though they had never been there at all. "So they're real," Lan Wangji murmured before he could stop himself. Wei Ying looked over. "The rabbits?" Lan Wangji nodded. "Yi used to complain about them every year." Wei Ying laughed softly. "She complained." He shook his head. "Then she'd tell me not to chase them away. They were here before us," she'd say. His voice unconsciously mimicked hers. Lan Wangji could almost hear his mother saying those exact words. Wei Ying smiled to himself. "They still steal my lettuce every spring." The smile lingered only briefly before settling back into something quieter. They continued walking. Near the farmhouse stood several practical buildings. A weathered barn, a tool shed, a chicken coop from which a few hens wandered freely across the yard. Near one corner stood neatly stacked firewood beneath a covered shelter. Everything had its place. Nothing appeared neglected. Not because it was immaculate, because it was cared for. The farmhouse itself stood at the center of it all. White walls, dark timber framing, a broad wooden veranda wrapped around the front, lined with potted herbs and flowering plants sleeping through the winter. A pair of muddy boots rested neatly beside the entrance. Another pair, noticeably smaller, stood beside them. Lan Wangji's gaze lingered for only a moment before following Wei Ying inside. Warmth greeted him immediately. The faint aroma of rice porridge and steamed buns drifted through the house. The interior was simple. Sunlight poured through large windows into an open living space where bookshelves stood beside comfortable sofas, softened by woven blankets. Several framed paintings decorated the walls. Some were landscapes. Others were quick watercolor sketches of flowers, vegetables, birds perched on fence posts. Lan Wangji slowed. The paintings carried a familiar vitality, not polished for exhibition, painted because someone loved what they were looking at. His eyes wandered farther. A bookshelf filled with gardening books stood beside volumes on art and design. A basket overflowing with yarn rested near an armchair by the window. An unfinished scarf still lay draped over its arm. Time seemed to have paused there, not frozen, simply waiting. Wei Ying led him farther inside. The dining room is this way. They entered a bright room overlooking the kitchen garden. A rectangular wooden table occupied the center. The windows looked out over neat rows of herbs and winter vegetables. Someone looked up from setting bowls onto the table. Luo Mei blinked in surprise. Oh. Her gaze moved from Wei Ying to Lan Wangji. For a heartbeat, surprise flickered across her face. Then she smiled warmly. "Good morning, young Master Lan." Lan Wangji inclined his head politely. "Good morning." She looked toward Wei Ying with questioning eyes. Wei Ying merely smiled. "I invited him for breakfast." Understanding immediately settled across her face. "Then you've come at the right time." She disappeared into the kitchen before either man could protest. Moments later she returned, carrying another bowl and another pair of chopsticks, as though an extra guest had always been expected. "Please." She placed everything neatly before them. "Eat while it's hot." Wei Ying looked up. "Aunt Mei." She paused. "You should join us." Luo Mei smiled apologetically. "I'll wait." She glanced toward the back door. "Your Uncle Ming is picking the fruit that's ready for harvest. He'll be back soon. We'll eat together then." Wei Ying nodded without insisting further. "Don't work too hard." She laughed. "You should be telling him that." With that, she returned to the kitchen. Silence settled over the table. Comfortable. Unforced. Wei Ying quietly filled 2 bowls with warm porridge before sliding one across to Lan Wangji. "Careful. It's hot." Lan Wangji accepted it with a quiet, "Thank you." Neither spoke again. Outside, chickens scratched lazily through the yard. Somewhere farther across the fields came the distant hum of machinery beginning another day's work. Inside, morning sunlight warmed the wooden floor as steam curled gently from their breakfast. Lan Wangji lowered his eyes to the simple meal before him. It wasn't elaborate. Just porridge, steamed buns, pickled vegetables, boiled eggs, and fresh fruit preserved from the last harvest. Ordinary food. An ordinary morning. Lan Wangji lowered his gaze to the bowl of warm porridge before him. Steam rose gently into the morning light. Outside, chickens wandered lazily through the yard. Somewhere beyond the windows came the distant voices of Luo Mei and her husband, followed by the soft rumble of a small utility vehicle heading toward the orchard. Nothing felt hurried. Nothing demanded immediate attention. Wei Ying ate quietly across from him, occasionally reaching for another steamed bun without a word. It was ordinary. The realization came so unexpectedly that Lan Wangji's chopsticks paused halfway to his bowl. Ordinary. He searched his memories. The last time mornings had felt like this, he had been a child, small enough that his feet had dangled from the dining chair. Back then, whenever he and his brother were allowed to visit their mother, mornings had begun slowly. The windows would be open to let in the sea breeze. Breakfast would already be waiting on the table. His mother would hum softly as she watered the flowers outside before reminding them to finish their milk. There had been no schedules, no meetings, no expectations beyond enjoying the day together. Then the visits became fewer, until one day they stopped altogether. Their father insisted it was for the best. Soon afterward, both brothers were enrolled in boarding school. From then on, every morning followed a timetable. Wake, study, train. Excel, university, the company, production meetings, deadlines, flights, presentations. There was always somewhere to be. Always something that needed doing. Always another expectation waiting just beyond the next hour. He had grown so accustomed to that rhythm that he had forgotten another way of living existed. Until now. His eyes drifted toward the windows. The winter sun spilled across the vegetable garden. Somewhere outside, a rooster crowed far later than any rooster ought to. Wei Ying looked up from his breakfast. "What is it?" Lan Wangji blinked, only then realizing he had been staring into the distance. After a quiet moment, he answered simply, "Nothing." It wasn't quite true. It wasn't nothing at all. For the first time in years, perhaps for the first time since childhood, he wasn't thinking about what came next. He wasn't watching the clock. He wasn't preparing for work. He wasn't trying to meet anyone's expectations. He was simply here. The thought settled over him with surprising gentleness. Without realizing it, the tension in his shoulders eased. His grip on his chopsticks relaxed. He picked up his bowl once more. And for the first time in a very long while, Lan Wangji allowed himself to simply enjoy an ordinary morning. Breakfast ended much as it had begun, quietly. Neither of them had spoken much, yet the silence no longer felt uncertain. Wei Ying gathered his empty bowl and chopsticks before reaching across the table for Lan Wangji's. Before his fingers could touch it, another hand stopped him. "I'll clean them." Wei Ying looked up. "That's all right." He smiled lightly. "You're my guest. Let me take care of it, young Master Lan." Lan Zhan. Wei Ying blinked. "What?" His voice was barely above a whisper. Lan Wangji met his eyes. "Lan Zhan." He repeated it with the same calm certainty. "Call me Lan Zhan." For a long moment, Wei Ying simply stared at him. He understood the meaning immediately. Names carried weight. Most people called him Mr. Wei. Those who knew him a little better called him Wei Wuxian. Only those closest to him simply called him Wei Ying. Likewise, Lan Wangji was not someone people addressed casually. He belonged to a world where formality was second nature, where status shaped conversations, where very few people would dare call him by his given name. Even fewer by his birth name, Lan Zhan. It was a name reserved for those he allowed close. Wei Ying lowered his gaze thoughtfully. Then, a gentle smile spread across his face. All right then. He looked up again. Lan Zhan. The name felt unfamiliar on his tongue, yet somehow it suited him. His smile widened just a little. Then you'll have to call me Wei Ying. Lan Wangji gave a single nod. Amen. Nothing more needed to be said. Wei Ying withdrew his hand from the bowls. Come on. Together they carried the dishes into the kitchen. Without discussion, each naturally found something to do. Wei Ying rolled up his sleeves and turned on the tap. Warm water flowed into the sink. Lan Wangji found a clean kitchen cloth hanging nearby. Neither instructed the other. Wei Ying washed. Lan Wangji dried. One bowl after another, one pair of chopsticks after another. The rhythm came unexpectedly easily. The quiet clink of porcelain. The sound of running water, morning sunlight spilling across the countertop. It was such an ordinary task. Yet somehow neither found the silence awkward. When the last bowl had been returned to its place, Wei Ying dried his hands on a towel. I'm going to check the irrigation channels. Lan Wangji looked at him. He understood what Wei Ying wasn't saying. The morning was over. The farm had work to do. Wei Ying would spend the rest of the day tending to it. This was the natural moment to thank him for breakfast, to excuse himself politely, to return to the beach house, to say they could meet again another day. Instead, the words that left his mouth surprised even him. May I accompany you? Wei Ying paused. For a heartbeat, genuine surprise crossed his face. You want to come? Lan Wangji inclined his head. If I wouldn't be in your way. Wei Ying studied him for a moment, then laughed softly. Not teasing, simply amused. I was about to spend the morning walking around muddy fields. He tilted his head slightly. It isn't very interesting. I don't mind. Another quiet moment passed between them. Finally, Wei Ying smiled. All right. He reached for a wide-brimmed straw hat hanging beside the back door and settled it onto his head. Then he picked up another from the peg beside it. Holding it out toward Lan Wangji, he said with easy familiarity, Come on, Lan Zhan. The farm's a little bigger than it looks. By the time they stepped onto the back porch, the morning had brightened considerably. The lingering chill of dawn had softened beneath the gentle winter sun. The air was still cool, but no longer biting. Wei Ying slipped out of his coat and hung it neatly on the hook beside the back door. He stretched his shoulders once before stepping into a pair of well-worn rubber boots waiting on the porch. Lan Wangji glanced down at his own shoes. Black leather, perfectly suited to an office, entirely unsuited to muddy fields. Wei Ying followed his gaze. He paused for a moment, as though considering something. Then he turned toward a small wooden cabinet tucked beside the door. Opening it, he searched briefly before pulling out another pair of rubber boots. They were clean, hardly worn. He set them in front of Lan Wangji. Here. Lan Wangji looked at them. They're a spare pair. Wei Ying smiled lightly. They should fit. As Lan Wangji changed his shoes, Wei Ying added almost absent-mindedly, I'll buy a new pair for you later. Lan Wangji's hands paused. He looked up. Wei Ying was adjusting the brim of his hat, seemingly unaware of the weight those simple words carried. Or perhaps he was aware and simply didn't make a point of it. A guest could always borrow a spare pair. A spare pair did not need replacing. Buying another pair meant expecting this one to stay, expecting it to be used again. It was such a small thing, practical, casual, yet it felt strangely like a quiet permission. You can come back, whenever you wish. Lan Wangji said nothing. He simply met Wei Ying's eyes and inclined his head. Thank you. Wei Ying returned the nod as though it were the most ordinary exchange in the world. Ready? Amen. Together they stepped off the porch. The packed earth gave way to narrow paths winding between vegetable beds and winter crops. The farmhouse slowly disappeared behind them as Wei Ying led the way deeper into the farm. For the first time, Lan Wangji was not merely visiting the place where his mother had lived. He was walking beside the man who called it home.